In amongst the MLS releases of schedule and various other news and notes yesterday, MLS announced that general allocation money is now public information. So the
Yeah.
big question, does this open MLS up to more water cooler talk?
Yeah, I think that's some of the logic here, some of the thinking that Major League Soccer has always been way too opaque, way too closed off with this stuff. We were talking about this before the show. What's interesting for me is that this step, right? Major League Soccer probably will always be a salary cap league. I don't think that's something that you start with and then one day go, we're tossing that all out, right? The league has always been very conscious of its salaries and its labor cost because that's the way you get yourself in trouble. If you allow for rampant overspending, you go NASL and nobody wants that, right? So they've been very careful with this, and I don't think that you're just going to take the training wheels off completely. I think there will always be some guidelines. And you could argue, look at the football league in England. You could argue that lots of competitions are going to be moving in this direction anyway. Like, this is just the world that we're in. Things are getting too crazy for spending, and they got to rein some of this in. PSR is not exactly this, but it's got elements of holding clubs back on spending and things like that. Barcelona, for example. So if MLS is always going to have salary caps, then this kind of has to come with it. Because what we're used to in American sports, because we've always done salary caps, or they've always been part of our conversation for the last 40 years. NFL, NBA, fans become armchair GMs, right? This is what we do.
Yeah.
Like, Bill Simmons made basically an entire career out of being an armchair NBA GM.
Yeah.
Partly, right? Like, I did the trade machine and I got this player and that player, because you got to make the contracts match, right? That's somehow that's. I know this is hard to explain to non-sports fans, but that's fun for us. What's fun for us is trying to make.
There's a reason why
match up.
fantasy football is a thing. Trying to piece
Exactly.
together
Exactly.
pieces of different values.
Right. I've got a certain amount of money, and I've got it just like a real GM. I've got a cap, and I've got to make these players fit. And we do it now. The Premier League has their own game. It's the same thing. You get 100 million pounds, and you got to go out and buy the players, and everybody's rated. Major League Soccer. So this is part of our experience as sports fans. It's not really, unless you play fantasy, and then it feels different. It's not part of the experience of a European soccer fan. This doesn't exist. You don't know. You might hear that somebody's on a certain number of pounds a week, or you know that there's a limited number of squad spots in the Premier League. See, you can only register, 25 players for the Premier League. You can use players in other competitions, but you can only register 25 in you might know these things, but there's no they can only spend so much money, and we got to make all these players fit. Oh, we need a fullback. Well, who's a fullback that makes a certain amount or costs a certain amount to fit into our budget? That's not really happening in European soccer circles, but it is part of the American sports experience. And publicizing the GAM numbers gives MLS fans who are inclined to that American mentality of playing armchair GM more information to work with. And it's great for the content mill, as all the bloggers and podcasters and YouTube people get to now dig in and go, okay, well, look, Atlanta's got $6.5 million in GAM, and they really need help at striker or at fullback or at central midfielder, and they can do this, that, and the other thing. We don't have all of it yet, Rob. We're not specific on budget charges for players. The league hasn't publicized those numbers exactly.
So there's still some mystery here.
There's still some mystery. But there's a lot less mystery now today, and it is fascinating. I do think there's also that, it could be good and bad in the sense that if your team has struggled, and you need help in a number of positions, and you go look at the MLS GAM numbers, the published GAM numbers for Major League Soccer, and they say that your team has $2.8 million in GAM, you might be going, oh, it's going to be a rough year. We just don't have the GAM. We don't have the money. We don't have the juice to bring down contracts for better players to help us get significantly better. And on the other side of the coin is a team like Atlanta or a team like Miami, who just traded Leo Campana and got $2 million more of GAM via that deal to add to a $4-point-something million they already had. They're loading up for something. And that anticipation is part of the intrigue that connects fans to the league.
I'm curious if the numbers. So Taylor Twellman tweeted out a whole list of every club's general allocation money funds. I'm curious how up to date this is because there's been a lot of deals this week as far as like
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the expansion draft and trading away super draft picks and all that because the Philadelphia Union they made waves quote unquote about trading away all of their college drafting rights for a whole bunch of GAM. And according to the list that Taylor Twellman put out, they've got 4.2 million in GAM. Does that mean? I mean, just like an NFL fan would talk about their cap space, I assume. Yeah,
Hmm.
this is somewhat parallel.
Yeah.
So 4.2 million they have available doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna to spend that. But so it does give the fan a little bit of like, come on, guy, poke the stick, like do a thing, spend
Right.
the money.
Yes.
And on this list, Houston Dynamo only has 2 million, to whereas Atlanta United has the most with 6.5. Um, do you think that in your mind, seeing these numbers, and New England has 5.5, St. Louis 5.3, do you think that this might excite a St. Louis City fan like, oh, we have 5.3 million to spend? Do you think
Yes.
that
Well,
that will
that's what I'm saying.
translate into
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
action?
Now, and again, so they released these numbers. You can find them on the MLS. You don't have to go to Taylor Twellman's Twitter page. You can find them on the MLS website. They're available to everybody there. But they publicized these numbers as of December 10th, which is 10 days ago. You mentioned that all the deals that have happened since then, and have been last couple of days. We've had a bunch of deals. I think Gaston Brugman was traded by the
Yeah,
Galaxy to
final
Nashville
MVP.
for Sean Davis went the other way. So, things are happening. I mentioned Leo Campana. So you have to do the math. Like you have to go, okay, New England had $5.5 million in GAM, and they just traded $2 million of that for Leo Campana. It could be, it's 2.5 over the next 2 years. It's $2 million this year. So related to this particular number, you just have to subtract that. And now, they have 3.5 now instead of 5.5 because they used their GAM, right? They could use it to buy down contracts on players they already have or players they bring in from outside the league, or you can do what they did, trade it to Miami, who says, we like Leo Campana, but we've got other things we want to do. You can have Leo Campana, $2 million in GAM in 2025. And now we all have to kind of do the math and look at this and go, okay, what does that mean? What does it indicate? What can we read in the tea leaves of the GAM to figure out what's going to be happening here in the very near future? Now, it would be nice if this was like rolling and they were constantly updating these numbers for us. Like every day we got a GAM update.
That'd be cool, like a stock market thing.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. This is a baby step. This is like, okay, here's some numbers. Now, run away really fast and don't worry too much about what people think about them because again, there are still mysteries baked into the league and how much these players are hitting the budget because we get the MLSPA numbers, but those are not specific numbers to the salary budget. Those are sort of generalized numbers the players taking home. It's sort of like, I know what my salary is and I know what my take home pay is, and those things are different, right? And this is not taxes, but it's kind of in the same idea that the accounting is not straightforward.
Another point that we were discussing at the top of the show about it's the 30th season for Major League Soccer and the steps that have or haven't been made. But we talked about coaches earlier in the week as well about how the hot seat is more of a reality. Just like the deal with Brugman leaving LA Galaxy, I feel like there's actually like like more of a ruthlessness or like quick to make a move previous to in the past. Like coaches just seem they were there for the length of their contract regardless, and then players like, oh, he's good, and they would just hang around like seemingly forever. But
Yeah.
now like there is actually some aggression and more what would you call it? Not
No, lack of
negotiating.
patience. Yeah, there's a lack a declining level of patience for
And
clubs.
shifting and getting themselves into position to be more deliberate. It isn't just like, oh, we got this guy in a 3-year deal, so he's just going to be here for 3 years. So you see, this is just steps in the evolution, and then maybe this will put more pressure on the general managers. Like, hey, Seattle Sounders, what are you doing with your $4.2 million a GAM? Come on.
Yeah, again, that's now it's more information for fans to consider what their teams are doing, right? And it brings up the pressure on the teams, which only makes for a more interesting league. And we don't have to make apologies for MLS, but there were certainly times when the league wasn't spending a lot of money, when the league was trying to just get by, that it was not great that we knew numbers because they looked so bad. The league
Yeah.
looks terrible. It's like, oh, Stuart Holden's making $14,000 a year.
Yeah.
That he could do better than that at Whataburger. Why is he doing that? It doesn't make any sense. Now we're not in that era anymore, and it behooves the league to show off a little bit. Now, again, these are not the same numbers in terms of transfer fees and all that stuff. And again, it's a completely different accounting system than what European fans are used to. But now that there are significant numbers of players making good amounts of money, this is necessary. This is good. This is sending a message that, like, it's just like when you show up at your high school reunion in the BMW or whatever. You're like, hey, look at me. Like, I'm big time now. I've got money. Major League Soccer is kind of saying to everybody via these numbers, we've got money. And there was a time when the league would prefer not to have done that because it would allow for agents to have leverage going into contract negotiations. Oh, look at all these teams with cash slopping around. They should be paying it to my client. The league
Don't give the labor any leverage, Jason.
No, exactly. But the league has clearly decided that whatever leverage the labor can get out of this is secondary or not nearly as important as the benefit of getting fans involved in thinking about these things in deeper levels. And again, the content machine gets going here, and that's good. That's good for the league.
If you got an opinion, follow or drop a comment in the chat. Do you think that you'll mix it up with your friends a little bit more? Talk about MLS team structuring at all? Follow or drop a comment and see if this gets you going a little bit and might enter your general conversations about MLS and soccer in general. Follow along at MKickaround on social media. You can interact with us there and give us a subscribe. Hit 450, I think, this morning or last night. So let's get another 50 before the end of the year. Did you know it was Christmas next week? That really
I
snuck
did
up
know
on
that.
us.
Yeah, it's
Really
almost
snuck
here.
up on us.
Give us a present. Subscribe to the channel.